For some reason, Robert Baker had a way of controlling people. It's why he had 5 women, some at the same time, why he had the 14-year-old, why he was in porn, why he was in managing, why he was in this, why he was in that. And it clicked with Monica. You think she's happy about that? You think her family's happy about that? You think Fabio's family's happy about that? But at least that's something they could have lived with if Fabio was still alive. And the reason he is not alive today is not just Robert Baker, it's Christopher Austin as well. And one guy got what he deserved and one guy didn't, and you should consider that. So they finally got their Austin 8 years later, and now we're at trial. And as I said, it shouldn't have taken, if this case was so clear-cut, 8 weeks and 3 days of argument to convince you that Monica Sementilli is guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and murder. They didn't have to spend any time on Austin. He pled guilty. What did they spend most of their time on? The phone records, the phone calls, the deletions, the WhatsApp, the Viber, all these things that they say is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, mind you, that she's guilty of murder. All they show is she desperately did not want someone to find out that she was having an affair with this lowlife. She didn't want to kill her husband. She was happy the way it was. The affair was secret. She was living a double life for a whole year and 2 months. Nobody knew about it. Traveling to Vegas wherever they went. Whatever you think about that, and I'm sure it's not much, it was working. But it wasn't working for Baker. It wasn't working for Baker. And he saw after that Christmas holiday in 2016, December, he saw that she's with the family. When she has a choice, she's with the family, and I'm here alone. Because most of the time that she was seeing Baker, it seems clear from the evidence, was when he was on trips. And he went on trips a lot. And they made a big deal out of the fact that she was sending Baker his itinerary. Well, why not? The plan wasn't to kill him overseas or in Canada. She sent it to him so they could get together and have sex and make videos. Oops. And drop thermoses. They could do anything. Anything they wanted, because nobody knew. And the only one who suspected was Deborah Obed. We got to hand it to her. You know what she figured out? Last week, Monica was in her sweats and tennis shoes at the gym. The next time I saw her, she was in a bridal gown or something. Something's changed. She went to the hairstylist. She got new clothes. She figured it out. And if she had had the, not guts, but she didn't want to ruin a friendship and go to her and say, "You having an affair with this guy?" Even after the murder. She should have, and eventually she did. And she was mad, and she testified that way before the grand jury, and she got up here and then told you the truth. With all of this, she doesn't believe she killed her husband. Just like the 2 girls don't. And the people who do are the people who were told, first of all, who were closest to Fabio, and second, were told by the police from the very beginning, "We got her, she did it, she had Fabio killed." And you can imagine, again, what you'd be thinking if you were related to him or you worked with him, especially considering the kind of person he was. Now, there's several more things to go over because the prosecution is going to go back to all the records that show the phone calls and so forth, and that's proof that they were having an affair. I submit to you it was proof that he had an obsession with her and she had an obsession with him. And whether or not he put a tracker on the car or not, I mean, why did we put it in the report? That's what he said. But even if you look at the pings that they had sometime, he was constantly in that area. He lived in that area, really. He was obsessed with her. That's why he was at Target that day. He had to know where she was every single day. And if he was gone, at work or whatever, you can bet they got together. The girls were at school, Bella was working, Jessica was at school, or vice versa. And they got together, and yes, they had the affair. And that's what those phone records really show. The same volume of calls as before they say there was a conspiracy to kill, as after they say. You look at those records, and we'll show them to you. Another thing that bothered me a little bit by the prosecution's opening argument. They said, as I recall, Monica kept calling and asking about the insurance. And I explained to you that when she was doing it, and no one thought she was anything more than a grieving widow who had kids to raise and was concerned and needed money because they had a mortgage and all the rest, and she didn't have a living. They thought there was nothing wrong with that, and after they were told she killed him, then suddenly she was harassing us and calling us all the time and wouldn't leave us alone. You have the tape recordings, as I said, of all the calls to Parshall. They only last about 15 minutes. You have a transcript of each one. Play them all. And you tell me if that sounds like a woman who's only interested in money or is interested in what happened to her husband and who killed him and when my daughter's going to get their life insurance. I understand you can't give it to me. Can you give it to them? You think they killed their father? Well, we're on a new lead. We're on a new thing, She's accused of lying all the time. We'll get to that and see what she lied about. You know who lied all the time? LAPD. Every single time we're on a lead, we check the DNA. It came back to Fabio. We're going to find out. And she's supposed to be asking about that because Baker needs to know if they identified him. Well, Baker would know if they identified him. They'd arrest him. Did he ever think that they would identify him and not arrest him because they weren't happy with enough evidence they had on her? And leave a known killer on the streets for 4 months? I'm sorry. That's not the way preserve and protect is supposed to be. It sounds to me like accuse and arrest. And that's exactly what they did. And when 4 months went by, and they had nothing more on her than more lurid photographs of her coming out of a bar and crying at a hotel and so forth and so on. Then they finally said, all right, we're going to send her an email. And it's going to say or suggest and then say, you've been cleared. You've been cleared. And let's see what she does. I mean, Jesus, she could have gone on the next plane for Italy. She was in New York or Canada, I forget. They trust her to come home. You know how many times she flew to Canada back and forth, knowing Robert Baker, according to them, was a murderer, and knowing his DNA was all over the place? Think she was comfortable? Let me ask you a question. You're smart. She's smart. That's what they're saying, smart enough to connive and have a conspiracy to kill Baker that was Fabio, that was really spelled out. What do you do if you and your lover who nobody really knows about except the gym people, conspire to kill your husband, and he does it. But he cuts his finger while he's doing it. What do? I got an idea. Invite him to the house where nobody knows him, and we'll see his finger cut. That's what you do. In fact, invite the whole gym team there. And you know what else you do? Fly to Myrtle Beach. That'll get them. That'll throw them off. And you know what else you do? Call Wella and tell them you want special rates at a hotel. Unbelievable. Nobody is that stupid. And somebody who's supposed to be smart enough with her lover to conspire through this whole plan with the tight window and all the things, and we'll get to that, to kill, and then the killing goes off. I don't know about you, but when I watched Law and Order, what they decide to do, we better not communicate for a few months at least. Don't call me, I won't call you. Let's wait till they clear you and get the insurance, and then we'll fly to Scheherazade or something. They start up almost a week or two after, and go to Myrtle Beach with excuses, and go out karaoke, and sending text messages home to her daughter. Just grow up, would you? I have a right to go out, and says to Morella, I'll fuck whoever I want. Sorry, that was the language. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do if I killed him, sure. I'm just going to spread it around how happy I am to be alone and show photographs. She was a little out of her mind. And it happens. She is not pled not guilty by reason of insanity. If she was charged with having an affair and breaking up her family, then I would have pled not guilty for reason of insanity. Who could be so insane as to want Robert Baker over Fabio Sementilli and Jessica and Isabella, and Mena and Anna and the whole family, and Morella and Marco and Luigi? Who would do that? She would do that for what? For insurance money that's going to run out in about 2-3 years? When your husband is making $280 to $300 and a rising star? And yes, if you're not happy, divorce him. You saw the chart up there. Much more money she could have with divorce. But it's not, it ain't going to work, my friends. I can't bring home Robert Baker and say, hi, Mom, would you call him son, would you? Here's your new son-in-law. I'm sorry, I mean, Fabio was okay, but he can't match up to Baker. That makes no sense, and the evidence has not changed that. But what makes sense is Robert Baker has finally, I didn't do a background check on the women that he was involved with in his marriages and the 14-year-old. I have a feeling the 14-year-old wasn't worth a lot of money. And I have a feeling the other ones probably weren't either. And he didn't have a dime to his name. He was way out of his league. Way out of his league. And you know, sex is great, but it kind of wears off after a while. I think my wife's in the audience. I didn't say that. But something is going to change, and he's not going to have her forever if she sticks with Fabio, and she's not going to leave her husband and 2 kids and going to college and everything. She has plenty of choice. Let's just do it the way it's been. And if it doesn't work out, maybe I'll realize what a great husband he was, or maybe I'll cheat again. I don't know. I don't know her that well. But there's a big difference between cheating and treachery. And you have that slide, Jeremy? We'll find it. It's caught my eye when Ms. Silverman put up these words up there, because she looked up the definition of betrayal. And I looked it up too, and she's right. Deception, disloyalty, treachery, duplicity, devious. I guess D's have a lot to do with it. Cheat, trickery, fraud, cunning, breach of trust, false-hearted, underhanded, unfaithful. Every one of those definitions applied to her. Because she was keeping it secret, she was being devious, she broke her trust, she was false-hearted, she was underhanded, she was unfaithful, disloyal, treachery. But then I realized there's one word missing in the definition of betrayal. Oh, there it is. Murder. There is a big difference. Even I could figure this out. Between cheating, disloyal, underhandedness, breach of trust, and murder. You've got to be a pretty evil person to do that. And I submit to you, she is not. And she did not. Now, Robert Baker, that's a different story. That's a different story. His life was filled with all those things. Plus, he was in the armed service. Plus, he had a dishonorable discharge, or he said it was a discharge without dishonor. I don't know. He had a funny definition of that. So he was a prime candidate, and he knew, sadly, where to stab someone and kill him. He also knew he couldn't do it himself. But I still cannot figure out Christopher Austin. But it makes sense, because if Baker was controlling enough to get her to be with him, and then after they're arrested, to say, I love you and I want to marry you, and God. They showed a photograph of Monica, and it said Mrs. Baker on the mirror. And that was supposed to be real evidence of how far gone she was, and she was pretty far gone. But it was also evidence of control. Because if you looked in the little corner of the mirror, you know who was watching her? Robert Baker. I guarantee you he said to her, you write Mrs. Baker up there, or I'm going to tell everyone about your affair, or I'm going to show them all your photographs, or who the hell knows. And then when they're in jail, he's going, I guarantee you, we got to stick together, we got to stick together. Now, I'll show you when we come back from the break some of the things in the overhears that the prosecution did not play for you. A lot of them don't sound very good. That's what happens when you just fall head over heels and now you're in prison, and the only one you can depend on you think is your lover, and he's telling you, I had nothing to do with it, and if I have to, I'll say I did it. They left out that he said, I'll say I did it even though I didn't. Why didn't they include that in they had how many hours of overhears? Why didn't they include the one that we ended up playing for you that said, you don't belong here, you're just a housewife? Now they can play all the other ones and they sound terrible, but I guarantee you, to do what she was told to do in that jail, even on her period, she said once, I had to do this and that and masturbate, and I mean, this man was a Svengali. She tied herself to him. And that was the biggest mistake of her life.